Welcome to Scarborough Toastmasters Presents, and I'm happy that you have decided to join us on our journey towards confidence. And before we know it, you'll become a speaking superstar. Today, I'm happy to be here with Toastmaster International's Better Speaking series, and today's presentation is going to be Impromptu Speaking. What's the definition? What is impromptu speaking? It's a speech that's not planned, not organized, and not prepared. For most of us, it is either the scariest part or the most exciting part of our meetings. Why is impromptu speaking important? Because life is a pitch. Everywhere you go, you are selling yourself. You want the world to see the best you. Not a fake you, not a phony you, but you want them to see the best you. And that's why impromptu speaking is important. Whether it's at a job interview when they ask you a question like, tell me about yourself, when you're meeting new friends at a social event, or at work when somebody is asking you a question you weren't expecting. You want to present the best self possible, and that is impromptu speaking. Now, at Toastmasters, we do table topics. Out in the real world, you're going to have lots of opportunities for impromptu speaking. And I'm going to finish off by giving you a few of my personal tips. When giving an impromptu talk, the first thing is listen. And so many of us are poor listeners. You really need to listen to what the person is saying. Often we are so busy thinking about what we're going to say, we don't really listen. So the number one thing is listen. Number two is pause. Give yourself a chance to think, a chance to organize your thoughts. Don't just jump in and start talking right away. Pause. And then do what we call confirm. Basically, you're just going to repeat what the topic is. If the topic is hats, you're going to say hats. So everybody knows we're on the same page. Now, you're going to tell us. You're going to tell us all about hats. And finally, you're going to end. Now, strategies. We're going to stick with hats. First, express an opinion. Maybe your opinion is hats are the greatest thing since sliced bread. And then you're going to tell us why. Address the cause and effect. Does putting on a rain hat cause it to rain today? And would putting on a sun hat cause the sun to come out? Or do we put on a rain hat because it rains? Cause and effect. Rain and rain hats. Break the topic into components, into smaller parts. So you could have all the different kinds of hats. Cowboy hats, hard hats, safety hats, golf hats. Or you could break the hat into men's hats, women's hats, children's hats. Or you could break it into hats made of wool for winter, hats made of nylon for golfing, hats made of cotton for sunning yourself. All the different types of materials. And finally, you can discuss the past, the present, and the future. The hats we wore 100 years ago are different than the hats we wear today. But what will the hats in the future look like? They might be out of materials we've never thought of. They might hook into our cell phones. Who knows what the hats of the future are going to do? Whatever you do, number one, be confident. Start out with a great smile. When you smile, people open up. They open up their ears and their minds and their hearts, so they're ready to listen to you. So start out, walk out, look people in the eye, have a nice smile, and try to look confident. Secondly, be brief. Nobody ever went home on the car ride and said, gosh, I wish that guy would have talked for another 10 or 15 minutes. Make your point, be brief, and then end. And finally, be sincere. If you're sincere about something, like you sincerely love hats, that is going to come through in your voice. And it's going to open up people's hearts so they can listen to you a lot better. Now I'm going to share with you some of my techniques. First of all, number one, lie. Lie again, and lie some more, but be sincere. Now, for some of you, you're going to think, this doesn't make any sense. How can I lie and be sincere? Well, let's say we're talking about hats for homeless people, and you tell a story about a friend of yours who had a great job but fell off a ladder, got addicted to drugs, and ended up homeless, and how you gave him a hat and that turned his life around. Well, that story might not be true. Maybe you never had any friend like that. You're speaking to a bigger truth. So even though you're telling a lie, you're speaking sincerely. You're speaking to the larger truth at hand. 2, take a stand. Sometimes for fun it could be opposite to what you believe in, but take a stand. Maybe you believe hats are a right, that the government should supply hats to everybody. Everybody needs a hat in the winter. It's too cold. Thirdly, have fun. When you have fun with something, you're going to do better at it. As a hockey coach, I know that when my kids have fun at hockey practice, they show up more, they play more, they have more fun, they play more, they get better. When you have fun, you get better. So remember to have fun. Don't put a lot of pressure on yourself to do the perfect table topic, because that will take the fun right out of it. And finally, be imaginative. Be imaginative. Let your imagination soar. Every year I am lucky enough to host a YLP, Youth Leadership Program. And when I am doing table topics with the young people, I am thrilled, amazed at where their imaginations go. They don't tie themselves down. They let their imagination soar. And it's amazing what they'll come up with. They'll talk about having hats for dogs, hats for cats, and hats for zombies. I never know what they're going to come up with next. So let your imagination run wild. Now, directions. There's all different directions you can go when you're given a topic as simple as hats. How do they make the world a better place? Love. I love hats. Just say, I love hats, and go from there. Why do you love them? They keep the sun off. They keep the rain off. There's lots to love. Or maybe you hate hats. Maybe they make you feel silly. Maybe you could never find a hat that fits right. Maybe they itch all the time. You can hate hats. Hats of the past. What kind of hats did cavemen wear? You can talk about that. What kind of hats did your grandfather wear? What kind of hats did they wear 200 years ago? You can talk about the evolution of hats from cavemen up to today. You might have a joke, a great joke about somebody losing their hat and it blew across the street and it crossed the road the way a chicken did. Who knows where your joke's going to go? A joke is always a great table topic. The future of hats. We have ordinary hats today, but in the future we might have hats that keep our heads cool or charge our phones from when we shake our head. Who knows what hats in the future are going to be, but you could talk about that. The world is a big place and everybody has hats. You could talk about hats from Indonesia, from malaria. Is that actually a country? From South Africa, from India, from the US, from Mexico. You could talk about hats from all around the world and how they all bring us together or how they're all different. Your family. You could talk about your family and their hats. Maybe you all have matching hats that you wear at your family barbecue. The first time you ever wore a hat. You could tell us a story about that. Maybe you were going ice skating with your dad and you remember that funny hat that he made you wear so that you didn't get cold or hurt your head when you fell down. The opposite is a nice technique. How can I talk about cold without talking about heat? How can I talk about hats without talking about socks? And you twist it around. Or you can switch the topic, do a transition. You could talk about a hat your grandfather wore when he went fishing and then transit or switch into a story about fishing with your grandfather. And then you can go into all kinds of stories about fishing. You can use a quote Like, the only thing we have to fear is fear itself, and that's why we all need to wear hats. Now, when you're doing your table topic, if you can, try and use all 5 senses. Talk about how the hat looks. Talk about how the hat feels. Talk about how it smells. Talk about how it tastes, which would be a strange one for a hat, but there's that old expression, if Donald Trump wins, I'm going to eat my hat. And we can talk about how your hat tasted. So try and bring in as many senses as you can to add some texture to your short little story. Now, as I said, I'm a hockey coach. The only way my kids get better at hockey is by practicing, by playing. And the only way you'll get better at table topics is participating. Now, with some clubs, every club has a different policy. Some clubs make every effort to make sure all the members get a turn at table topics at every meeting. And that's what I love. I think that's great. Even if you made a speech, you should still get a chance to do a table topics. If you're the Toastmaster or the General Evaluator or the Joke Master, that should not prohibit you from getting a turn at table topics. I love it when the club puts the members first. They made the commitment to the club, and they get to do table topics every week. Other clubs have a different attitude. They give all the table topics turns to the guests, and the members don't get enough turns. But that's something between you and your club. But every chance you get at a club meeting, participate in table topics. That's the only way you'll get better. When it's somebody else's turn, and this is a trick a friend taught me, if the topic was hats, if he didn't get that topic, he would still jot down a few words about what he would have said. And it's funny, sometimes you just hit a mental roadblock. You got nothing. And then other times you go, oh, I would have talked about the hat I wore at my wedding, or the hat that my grandfather had. It was a cowboy hat, and he taught me how to shoot. There's all kinds of different ways you can go, but jot them down. That'll give you some mental practice at what way you would have gone. And the third thing is, I'll be driving along in my car, and I'll play the table topics game with myself, and I'll go, grocery store. And I'll tell a story to myself about a grocery store for a minute. And then I'll see red light, and then I'll talk about red lights for a minute. And then I'll see somebody walking down the street with a baby carriage, and I'll talk about babies for a minute. And that's one way that you can improve practice all on your own. Finally, don't try to be perfect. If you try to be perfect, you're going to take the fun out of it. Just try and do it as much as you can, and you're going to get better. Because remember, your whole life is a pitch, and you want the world to see the best you that there is. Thank you for joining us for another edition of Scarborough Toastmasters Presents, and I'm glad to see that you have decided to join us on our journey towards confidence and leadership. We'll see you next week.